Hi, I'm Alicia, and welcome to my Operational Innovations channel, where I focus on process tips, techniques, and strategies to help you level up in the area of project management, product ownership, and small business operations. Today's topic, the small business health check. From my top 10 tips list, this is the number 3 tip: do the work. Now, I'll put a link to my launch video that goes into all of the other top 10 tips on the subject of the small business health check, but this is the first focus video that gets into what do I really mean by do the work and why is that important for small business operators. Now, as I mentioned, I've been an entrepreneur before, a couple of times before, and what I'm sharing with you are the types of things that helped me be in my 5th year of business, come off of a banner year last year, and really actually is helping me to survive in these times of global crisis. Now, your mileage may vary on these tips, so I welcome you sharing your tips and your comments and your strategies for what you mean by do the work and how you put systems in place to help you do that. So let's talk about do the work here. What do we mean by do the work? You know, years ago, as I mentioned, I was a small business, how would you say this, like advisor or consultant. And I worked with small businesses mostly on their IT setup, their IT and their process setup. You know, they're running a small business and the IT thing just baffled them. And so how do I get them, help them get these systems in place? And so I did that some years ago. And one of the patterns that I noticed is that small business operators get into business for the thing that they love. They are a therapist, they are a painter, they are a carpenter, they are a chef or a coach or a software developer or a project manager, whatever those things are, the things that you love, this is why you go into business. And that's what you want to do. And that's what you love doing, is the stuff that you love to do. But what you don't love to do is all the stuff that's behind that, the structures that actually help support you to be out there sharing with the world this thing that you love to do. And it's all that back end stuff that really can help you have the time and the space and the energy to do the thing that you love. But when they're not in place, it can really be a challenge and a problem. And I learned this myself in time 1 and time 2 of being an entrepreneur. This is one of those things that I learned. And what I also learned on this subject is that when I didn't have these structures in place, I was completely out of balance. I was completely out of balance because I was doing everything, or I wasn't doing everything, and I was worrying about not doing it. And so I was completely out of balance. And so when I think about those really, I've got the things in the top 10 list, but when I think about those things that kind of jump out for me right now about, the type of back end things that we oftentimes want to just put the blinders on about, know your numbers. You can go, I'll put the link below to that video and the supporting videos, the supporting interviews on this topic. Know your numbers is critical. We can put the blinders on all day, but that doesn't help support us to do the thing that we love. Workspace, depending on what your work is, you want to make sure that you've got the space that supports you being able to do your work. Now, I'm not saying you have to go out and rent an office or anything like that. I work out of my craft room and I'm very happy to do that. And momentarily we'll be going out on the road and I'll be working out of an RV. So it doesn't really matter where you work. You just need to make sure that the space supports what you're trying to do. The third thing is setting up accounting systems. This is something I learned over the past 2 times of being an entrepreneur. And setting up accounting systems is really important. Now, time 1 and time 2, I'll have to say my accounting systems were Excel. And that can be fine, but I'll tell you, when I needed a number at a glance or when it was tax time, I was always a stressed out wreck because I was trying to do everything. I was trying to do it all. And you know what? Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. And that's what I learned. And I learned that this time around. So setting up accounting systems like QuickBooks, having a bookkeeper, I have to tell you that has been such a relief for me and such a game changer. When it's tax time, I come in, hit a button, run a P&L, run a balance sheet, run a customer survey, a summary, and take that over to my tax person. It's just been a game changer. And that is just not how I should be spending my time. Just because I can doesn't mean I should. I have a quote here that I wrote on my computer. It's on a sticky note here. And when I get my new computer, I'm going to have to rewrite it and transfer it over to the new computer. And this was asked by a very good coach and friend of mine, Cindy Lima of Cindy Lima Coaching. I'll put her link below too. She just simply asked me in a coaching session where I was like scrambling and whining about whatever I was whining about, all the things I had to do. And she just simply said, well, how should you be spending your time? And I was like, what? You're right. How should I be spending my time? And that's a powerful question for me. So I leave that on my computer because I need to be reminding myself that just because I can doesn't mean I should. And I need to get the resources and the support and the structures in place to help me have the kind of structure to do the thing that I love, which is coaching, which is training, which is organizational change, which is public speaking. These are the things that I love, but I have to have the structures under my business to be able to do that. The fourth thing is invoicing. And this is do the work. All these things are do the work. This is the stuff that needs to be done. And like I said, you don't have to do it, but you need to make sure someone is doing it. So invoicing, one of the other patterns that I noticed when I was advising small businesses is that there's a problem with invoicing. And it's kind of an interesting spectrum. In some instances, people they weren't invoicing and they desperately needed the money. In other instances, they don't need the money and they're not invoicing. And so I don't understand. I'm not in that picture at all. I'm squarely in the center of the person that does the invoicing. Even though there's a lot of the back end stuff that I don't love, I do invoice. But I've created a bit of a structure for myself with that. When I do a statement of work with a client, the minute that statement of work gets signed, I go into QuickBooks and I set up the invoice. I set up the invoice with the purchase order numbers, with the amounts, with the descriptions, all of that stuff. And even if I'm invoicing over a series of months, I set up every single invoice that's supposed to go off on the first of the month. And I just put a little note in my journal that says on January 1 or February 1 or whatever it is, send an invoice to this list of customers. Now, listen, that helps me not get all tangled up, because as you're doing the thing that you love, it's this kind of stuff that becomes a burden to you when you don't have some sort of structure in place. So that was a great thing that I've learned over my time, that the minute the statement of work gets signed, set up those invoices, get all that stuff in place, and then just write a note to yourself. So when it's time to invoice, you get that. I love invoicing because I like getting paid. And getting paid is important for me as a small business operator. So the invoicing thing, there's a whole lot of other stuff I don't love doing. Invoicing would not be one of those things. The other thing that I'll say, this is the fifth tip on do the work. Another one of those things that needs to be done that oftentimes goes by the wayside is getting appropriate business licensure. Now, I live in Southern California, and I am in an area, in a city, a metro, not an urban, but a central to the county city area. And it is not difficult to go get a business license. Now, depending on where you are, you might want to look into what that's going to take to get a business license. But getting a business license, you go over to the office. I think it's the tax assessor's office, just like right around the corner from our house. It's a $50 fee. You go in, you get the business. Now you might need to do a business name search. So depending on the name of your business, naming your business, there's a couple of steps there, but you want to make sure that you get that. And if you're going to be doing business as, so having a different name, you need to doing a little bit of there. It's called a DBA, doing business as. You need to get that in place as well. But these things don't take long and they don't cost very much. And there's a legitimacy to that when you sign up and get a business license. And what I mean by legitimacy is there's a credibility factor in your business as a legitimate business. Now, it doesn't take long to do, but it's an important step. And if you're working with certain clients, when you're doing contracts with them, they might require certain things. So you want to make sure that you get that in place. The other thing that I've noticed as a pattern in small businesses when I did some business advising and just kind of observing other folks that do the work that I do is having appropriate contract templates in place. Statements of work. I can't even tell you how many times I have revised my statement of work. If I look back at my early statement of work from 5 years ago, I would say that it's really matured. And it's matured in a lot of ways, right? I've actually moved over to using an MSA, which is a master services agreement, and then with just a project update addendum, so that I'm not writing the whole contract language again and again. But it took me like 4 years to get to that. And I'll tell you, in time 1 and time 2 of being an entrepreneur, I'm trying to think that I even have statements of work. I'm not even sure how I did. I had some agreement, some sort of an agreement. So you can use things like statement of work or statements of work, excuse me. You can use memos of understanding. I work with some folks that are subs with me. So these are people that I'm in partnership with, and they do work on my clients that work that I can't do, but they have a skill set to do it. And so I have memos of understanding with those folks. So there's a lot of different things that you can do and a lot of different ways to do that, but did not have any kind of contracting, not a good idea. I actually, you'll see in a video that's coming up in a series down the road here on my number 8 topic, Barter Like a Boss. Dana talks about when you're in a bartering relationship, contracting and what that can look like. So you'll want to stay tuned for that video. Make sure that you like and subscribe so that when that comes out, you'll get a chance to see that. But business contracts, super duper important. One other thing here that I'll mention, and I don't know where I am with my numbers on this, but one other thing that I'll mention is business insurance. This is super important. And if you own a home or if you have any possessions that you own, like maybe you own a boat or, whatever it is, you want to make sure that you have business insurance. I can't even tell you how many people are in business for themselves as entrepreneurs, single operators just like me, and they don't have any business insurance. And so you just want to make sure that you get that. I remember when I very first started 5 years ago, my very first client, I was all excited. I was going to go in and doing some coaching and some training. We were putting together their vision for agility. It was really exciting. And they're like, you need a $4 million insurance rider before you can even walk through the door. And I'm like, what? Now, it doesn't cost $4 million, but the coverage is $4 million. And so I didn't know of any resources at the time. So I just went around to the local insurance guy and I got this insurance so that I could start this work. Now, you may say as an entrepreneur, well, wait a minute, I am spending money on insurance and I don't have any work yet. But I'll tell you, it's like car insurance. You're not going to drive without that, right? So you want to be making sure that you have the appropriate insurance in place. And I've since found a really great company that I love for insurance. I used that insurance company because I just didn't know where else to go at the time, but I use Hiscox and I love them because everything is online. You go through a whole application, you answer some questions, they give you a quote, you can pay in payments, you can pay with a credit card. That first time around with that insurance company, I had to cut that check and just bounce that money to them right immediately, the entire year's premium up front. Yuck, if you're a small business operator, that's not always possible, right? So I love Hiscox. I'll put the link to them below. They are fabulous for small business, and they offer all kinds of different service options for, small business operators, no matter what type of work that you do. All right, so I've said all that. These are just kind of the top, several things that come to mind for me. I've lost track of how many it is at this point, but, these are the things that come to mind for me. And when I say do the work, again, it doesn't mean you have to do it, but this is the work that still needs to be done to support the structure of your business and having you be out in the world doing the thing that you love. And so you want to make sure that you get that support and that, and find those resources. A resource that I've used before, I mentioned Hiscox for insurance. I'll put some links to some tips about how you can find a business license. Even writing a business plan is another thing that's actually coming to mind as I'm sitting here. And your local town is going to have a small business operations office, and you can go to them and get a template for writing a business plan. So that's another one of those do the work things that I often find that small business operators don't want to do. The challenge with the business plans that I've found, because I've actually worked with small business operators on doing these plans, the challenge that I found is the standard template, at least the one that I was using probably about 10 years ago, it's like 50 pages long. And people are like, I don't have time for that. They don't have time to put a business plan together. And so there's kind of a little bit of irony in that, right? So you want to be able to put a business plan together. And I've noticed when I went out to these sites that they now have more streamlined business plan, like a lean startup type of business plan. So you don't have to go through 50 pages of a business plan. I think the thinking about the things that are required for your business is worth it. So even if you just download the template and look at the different category areas that they're going to ask you questions about, and just write a couple of bullet points on a sticky note about what's important to you in those areas, there's your business plan. It doesn't have to be fancy. Another resource, I started to mention this, that I've used before is Upwork. And what I love about Upwork, and I'll put a link to them below too, is that there's all kinds of entrepreneurs like yourself out there offering services. So if you need a bookkeeper, if you need somebody to write your slides, I've actually found this fabulous gentleman in Romania that does slides for me. And I don't have to pay a lot of money. He's a phenomenal designer with slide work and stuff. So because I do public speaking and sometimes I don't always have the time to put the fancy up the slides. And so he's been a great support for me, and he's on my team. So that's the whole idea, right? So doing the work is important, but you also need to sort of build a team so that you don't have to do it all. So that's it, folks. That's the drill down for do the work. I also have a book link that I'm going to put below, and it's not specifically about the mechanics of what I was talking about in this video, but it's the concept of do the work, and it's a phenomenal book by Steven Pressfield. And I will put that in the link below because it talks about the mindset of doing the work, and that's a really important part to this concept of do the work. So share your input, share your ideas and your insights, tips or tools that you have about business structures that you use to do the work and what you like and what works for you. Love to have your comments. We're all in this together and we can all use the help that we can get, any help that we can get. So thank you for watching. Please stay tuned for the next drill down video from my top 10 tips series. Plan your work. And that might seem a little out of order because I did do your work before plan your work, but there's some great tips coming there. So I invite you to like and subscribe and hit that notify button so that next time you can get the tips about plan your work. Until next time, I'll see you then.